Our second speaker. She joined the Legion of Mary in 1963 in the junior Concilium. She was first appointed to the office as secretary of the senior Concilium and then later as a president. She was elected treasurer of the junior curia, where she met her future husband, Raymond. After their marriage in 1972, she accompanied him on Extension and Peregrinatio for Cristo, or PPC, project to Denmark. She took part in musical operatas, scripted and directed by Frank. Rehearsals held in his home, the home of Frank. In the early 70s, typed some of his correspondence one night a week. So she typed a lot of Frank letters. Please don't be jealous again. She was a correspondent to Oberhausen in Germany, and later, on her various returns from rearing their family of 4 children, she took up correspondence with Bicolandia, Philippines. Bicol, Philippines. After she was the Concilium representative to the 4th World Meeting of Families held in Manila, Philippines in 2003. She has a second council here in Ireland that she corresponded with. She did 2 terms as president of her local curia. She was part of the Concilium delegation in Rome in March 2014 for the signing of the Legion statutes at the offices of the Pontifical Council for the Laity. Presently, she is completing her second term as assistant treasurer of Concilium in charge of English literature. Without much ado, brothers and sisters, Sister Annette Mulrooney. Let's give a round of applause.
After all that, I'm really nervous. And I have completed my second term as assistant treasurer of Concilium, so I've done my second term. This is a talk on true devotion to Mary, and I've found reading the various books on true devotion to Mary gives great enlightenment and encouragement. The treatise on true devotion, Secret of Mary, and Preparation for Total Consecration according to St. Louis Marie de Montfort, The de Montfort Way by Frank Duff, True Devotion by Father Michael Kennedy, and quotes by Father Bede McGregor and Father Aidan McGrath are the main sources for my talk. Father Bede McGregor, spiritual director of Concilium, gave an allocution some time ago on Jesus at the center of true devotion to Mary. Quoting from it, the most profound principle of the true devotion to Mary is that it is centered on Jesus. Mary exists for Jesus. Her very identity is a relationship to Jesus. Every thought, word, and deed, suffering of Mary is for Jesus. She is absolutely Christocentric. Father goes on to say, as I have said so often before, there is absolutely nothing in Mary that does not point to Christ. She is utterly and totally willing and joyfully immersed in Jesus, her Son, and the Son of God. So to give anything to Mary is to have it immediately given to our Lord. Mary is a means and not the end of the true devotion. Quote from St. Louis Marie de Montfort, this devotion consists in giving ourselves entirely to the Blessed Virgin in order to belong entirely to Jesus through her. Saint Louis-Marie de Montfort was born at Montfort, Macain, France, 1673. He was the second of 18 children. Louis was his baptismal name. He assumed the name of Mary in confirmation. Love of Mary was, as it were, born in him. From his earliest years, he proclaimed that he would one day be a tireless teacher of devotion to her. He was ordained a priest in 1700, died in 1716. He spent his life as a missionary and founded 2 orders, one of sisters and one of priests. The treatise was written early in the 18th century but remained in manuscript until found in 1842 at the Mother House in Vendee. It was published and an English translation appeared in 1862. After some initial doubt at Rome, the treatise was explicitly approved by Pope Pius X and Benedict XV, and then by Pius XII, who canonized the saint in 1947. Some years ago really, I listened to a tape by Father Aidan McGrath, that great Legion priest. He was speaking on true devotion to Mary. He said he did not understand de Montfort. He read the book when he started the Legion of Mary in his parish in China. He saw he should be reading de Montfort. Reading it, he could not make head or tail of it. Even though he made an act of blind faith and made his act of consecration and said, "I don't understand what it is all about, but you can have it, take it." He came home after 16 years due to illness, the year de Montfort was canonized. He met a legionary one day in O'Connell Street in Dublin, and he said to him, "I'm trying to read de Montfort and can't make head or tail of it." Seamus, the legionary, in 1 minute explained de Montfort to me. Could have knocked me over. All of a sudden the light came. As St. Louis-Marie de Montfort had said, it needs grace. I saw the light. Seamus went off and didn't realize that was the first time I understood what it was. And from that day I got extraordinary peace of mind, and I tried to develop it. It's not only making the act of consecration, you must try to live it. Keep Mary in your mind all the time. And Father Aidan spoke about how Frank Duff had a problem with the true devotion. He had terrible trouble with it. Father Aidan said he never met anyone in his life with such a brilliant mind as Frank Duff. One day Father asked him to look over a document, a foolscap of type, when he had time. Mr. Duff took up the page, looked at it, and spoke to Father Aidan about it. He had a photographic memory. He read all of Cardinal Newman, all the histories in the Dublin Library. He took up de Montfort's true devotion and could not understand it. Tom Fallon, a friend, encouraged him to read it again. Frank Duff read it 6 times. He said, with sweet tyranny, Tom forced me to read that book, and only then I saw the light and I understood de Montfort was right and I was wrong. A little paragraph from Father Michael Kennedy's booklet on true devotion to Mary. Frank Duff began to give talks on the subject of true devotion to Mary. And eventually the question was put, why don't we try to put this into practice? And from those meetings were held, the first ever Legion of Mary meeting. Frank Duff recalls, it was just like making an electric connection, and something happened. We spent the evening talking about the devotion. I do not say that even so we understood it fully, but at least we were in ardent sympathy with it. We desired to practice it. Then at once the Legion happened. A meeting was arranged, 8 p.m., September the 7th, 1921, the eve of Our Lady's birthday. It was really born with Mary. So we see that the Legion was the fruit of the true devotion to Mary. A little paragraph from Father Bradshaw's book on Frank Duff. And in the section, Louis from Montfort, to quote from one paragraph, was Frank the noble soul that St. Louis Marie de Montfort had prophetically in mind when, more than 200 years ago, he wrote in his treatise on the true devotion, "My labour will be well rewarded if this little book falls into the hands of a noble soul, a child of God and of Mary. My time will be well spent if, by the grace of the Holy Spirit, after reading this book, he is convinced of the supreme value of the solid devotion to Mary I am about to describe." Now, in the De Montfort Way by Frank Duff, and quoting from the beginning of the book, Mary is our mother, but she can nourish the soul only in the measure that it depends on her and works in union with her. A first step towards the entering into that intimate relation with her must necessarily be to know her. To know her and to appreciate her, one must read about her, study her. How, said the wayfarer to St. Philip, can I understand except someone show me? If we want to understand concerning our Blessed Lady, we cannot pass over St. Louis de Montfort, his life as well as his writings. And just to quote Father Bede again, he says, "One also reads with great profit Brother Duff's important article, The Legion is Pure Christocentric. That article is vintage de Montfort. Frank Duff's article on true devotion to Mary in Virgo Predicanda, quoting from the last paragraph, de Montfort attaches large promises to the worthy practice of the devotion. It would be nothing less than a supreme tragedy if he were to be imagined as exaggerating, because he does not exaggerate in the slightest way. The soul that Mary is enabled really to mother grows beneath her touch." And again, Father Bede spoke about Edel Quinn and the true devotion to Mary. He said, "We know that she asked her spiritual director if she could practice by vow the true devotion to Mary as set forth by St. Louis Marie de Montfort. Father Moynihan OP, the vice postulator of her cause, wrote that she read and reread that little book until its teaching became part of the very texture of her soul. Edel carried out to the full the de Montfort formula of doing everything in Mary, with Mary, and for Mary. It was not only in difficult times that Edel practiced true devotion to Mary, but in all the circumstances of her life. She really enjoyed life to the full, always ready to laugh and smile, and gifted with a great sense of humour and playfulness. She did all this in union with Mary and the joy of her Magnificat. Her consecration to Mary included the whole of her life. She included Mary and was united to Mary in everything. I think her extraordinary freedom from worry and fret, her lovely and habitual serenity were rooted in her complete trust in and love of Mary as her mother and intimate friend. And this should be the secret of the life of every legionary. I'm going to let Brother answer all the questions.
Thank you, Sister Annette. So, you can throw in your questions, any questions related to the talks or about the Legion of Mary as well, okay? We just have to clarify that one. So any questions and any reactions, comments on the top? Consecration to Mary. Yes, sister. Please introduce your person, sister.
Hi, I'm Teresa. I'm from Miss Rose from Newmarket, St. Elizabeth's Eden. I'm new to the Concilium, to the Legion of Mary. Just a year. I made my consecration. I asked if
Just a few words.
just a few words. Oh, it's coming. All right.
Miracles again.
God's works slowly, and yes, I did pray to Adele Quinn for my father. He had 3 eyesight problems, and I think I prayed a year, and I even asked for a relic, and then we prayed upon him, but none of his eyesight was restored. Yes, that's right. But I want everybody to know, with faith, I'm sure there's other miracles, just getting my relatives to pray for him on that day, and other things, that there is hope. I joined an auxiliary, Legion of Mary, up in Halliburton, Minden, and then I joined an active Legion of Mary because the Rosary, I wanted to teach the little ones, so we do that. And I had this desire to know Mary more, so yes, I've been reading the True Devotion, done by Eddie. Anyways, it's Louis de Marie de Montfort, but Eddie, I forget his last name.
Doherty.
Yeah, Doherty. He did a different version of it. I asked, is there prayers that we, I've been saying prayers anyways before I go out to do work, and ask Mary to help intercede and help us to work well.
I'm sure your Concilium will guide you on other prayers there.
Okay.
Thank you very much, sister. Thank you.
Thank you. That voiceover from the church, that's Father Lorenzo at St. Lorenzo. Thank you. Yes, Brother Guy Blanchard.
Hi, my name is Guy Belanger. I'm with the Our Lady Seat of Wisdom Presidium in Ottawa, and I'm also secretary of the Regia of Ottawa. My question is, Sister Annette mentioned that Frank Duff read the True Devotion 6 times. Now this was before he created the Legion of Mary?
Yes.
Huh?
Yes.
So he brought that to it.
He was in the Vincent de Paul. He was president of a conference at the time, and Tom Fallon was discussing the book, and he found a cheap copy on the Keys in Dublin, and he read it once and put it down. And that's nice, that's okay, and he put it away. He said, that's not for me. And when Tom came on the scene, he said, did you read it? Yes, I read it, yeah. Well, what? he just, and this went on. He was pestering him. He said, you read it again. And Frank couldn't make head nor tail, as Father Aidan said too. Because for some people, without the grace, it's strange reading. You have to get to understand it, but you have to understand why you think it. So finally, after, as he said, 6 readings, he just accepted it. He still didn't understand it and didn't want, he really wasn't into it. But he was bringing an old soldier. He wasn't that old, but he was a bit of an alcoholic. And every now and again they tried to dry them out. It was the expression at those days. And he brought him down to a Cistercian abbey in Ireland. And this was a place where it was successful. They used to keep them for a weekend or longer, and they would try and wean them off the drink, sort of thing. So he had brought him down, and that night, one of the monks said to him, "Frank, would you like something to read?" And he said, "I would love something to read on Mary, something that ordinary lay people might understand, because I just find it hard to understand what people are going on about." He said, "Okay, I have the very book for you." So he found a book, and it was a Father Concilium. He was an Italian-American working in New York, and he wrote this book, and it was The Secret, or The Knowledge of Mary. And it obviously must have been a very simple one, because he felt he was very simple, and it gave him that night insights that he hadn't got before on Our Lady. And he literally wrote down, in those days there was no photocopy. This is 1919 or 19, I think it was just after the war was over. This soldier was back from the front, and no wonder he was an alcoholic. But anyhow, that night he literally stayed up all night writing paragraphs from this book. And he said this book gave him the key to the Montfort's true devotion. And he said without it he wouldn't. So he came back, and then he started to give talks. And these ladies were helpers to the Vincent de Paul. There was no women in the Vincent de Paul in those days. So they were helpers for state occasions, such as if there's a need for a cup of tea and all the rest of the things, and cooking, anything like that, they would provide their services. And then they formed into a group for the Pioneer Total Abstinence Association, which is in the handbook. Again, it's people giving up drink in reparation to the Sacred Heart. So it's a special reason for giving up the drink, or not drinking in the first place. But they founded a council that met once a month. And at one of those council meetings, they asked Frank Duff to give a talk on true devotion. And that was the thing that started to develop towards the famous meeting that they held to discuss it further, and that became the Legion of Mary. So, that's a long-winded way of explaining something. I don't know what the original question was.
It was wonderful, brother. Okay, let's have another question. Sister.
Thank you. Wendy Maurice from Our Lady of Praise Presidium in Penitentiary. Could you just tell me what that book title and author was that he read, that he found?
The Knowledge of Mary. Now, it was 1898, I think, around that time it was published in New York. But Frank Duff put most of that into the handbook. So you don't need to go searching. You can find it. There are reproduced copies available.
I'm having a hard time with the True Devotion by Montfort too.
Good. There's a lot of people like that. You do need to find ways. But the handbook itself explains most of the True Devotion in practical terms.
Brother Gary again. Another question.
It's not a question, but I found that reading The Secret of Mary first helped me to get into the devotion.
Good.
There's another question at the back. Sister Mila? Please pass on the microphone. Thank you.
My name is Mila Benedicto from Holy Cross Parish. My question is regarding the True Devotion. Can we use this as a second, as a spiritual reading in our meeting, or it will prolong our meeting?
Well, you'll find a lot about the spirit, or about true devotion in the handbook. But spiritual reading in the handbook or in the meeting shouldn't be long. It should be 3 to 4 to 5 minutes maximum. It should be, there's a natural stops in each chapter, and you shouldn't read a full chapter or anything like it, but just a natural stop, because the meeting is a business meeting and a prayer meeting wrapped into one. And it's vital that you stick to the agenda, and a tight agenda, because your meeting must end in an hour and a half after starting, and that's assuming you have more than 7 to 10 members. If it's less, it should be an hour-long meeting or whatever. You shouldn't be prolonging meetings. A meeting, it's a business meeting, and there shouldn't be all sorts of meditative rosaries or any of these things. They're for other times and beautiful times, but not that time. We're there to serve Our Lady in a practical, as Father B. McGregor described, the Legion of Mary is Mary with her sleeves rolled up. She means business, and we better mean business for her to serve her.
I think this is also a good time, brother, that there are always a question why we are not including the Fatima prayer when we pray the rosary during the meeting. So probably you can clarify that one as well. It's a very controversial question.
Yes, we often are asked that question. But first of all, the Legion Rosary is based on the Dominican Rosary. You might notice all the little extra at the beginning, the 3 Hail Marys, the Creed and all that. That's not included in the Legion Rosary, because the Rosary is as the Dominicans have it. Now, as far as the Fatima prayer is concerned, that prayer didn't become, it's not universal, but it didn't become popular until after 1948, when Pope Pius XII supported the Fatima apparition. It has grown as the years passed, but the Legion obviously has started 20 years before that, and Frank Duffel was very strict about what prayers could be said. It's just like the Mass, the canon of the Mass. No priest is allowed to interfere with those words or anything like that. And it's also asked for our obedience, and you only get grace out of obedience. If you start going off on your own, and the Legion will diverge, and we won't recognise your Legion if you don't stick to the format as it is in the handbook. So you'll not receive grace if you're introducing the Fatima prayer into a Legion Rosary. By all means, use it in your parish, and every time you say the Rosary elsewhere, that's fine, beautiful. That's the way we all do it. But as far as the Legion, you just obey the rule, and prayers invariable. You're not to be added, as I said earlier, adding prayers after the meeting is out of the question. There's only the one prayer and no other to be added, and even then, it was great reluctance that we allowed that to happen. The prayer to the Fatima, with no one else, and no other prayer. And the Fatima prayer is for outside use, and Our Lady will accept that in obedience. And so I think we should do likewise.
Thank you, brother.
Hello, Brother Raymond, and thank you once again. So at our first meeting with you and Sister Annette the other day, you had actually shared some very wonderful and inspiring words of wisdom, including some of the principles and standards that we as legionaries should keep in mind, especially as officers in our own presidia or councils. Would like for you to share that again with the rest of the legionaries, especially as to how we should be looking and approaching the works that are assigned to us, and what our roles are and responsibilities, and our obligation to Mary in terms of the works for the Legion of Mary.
I don't think we'll get an opportunity to go into much detail now. But I think the only thing that I remember saying at your meeting was the idea of the grace of office and the privilege we have to serve Our Lady in different spheres. And that if we're being called on to become an officer of a Concilium or of a council, this is an extraordinary grace from Our Lady. And like, people are so devotional to Our Lady and so prayerful, and yet so many might consider their officership a chore to be attended to. And that is so sad, because every time we meet, we have Mary, we have the Holy Family together with us, because the Lord promised whenever there's 2 or 3 gathered, He is there among them. And we believe the whole family is there. Jesus, Mary, and Joseph. Poor Joseph shouldn't be left out because he has such a part to play. And that we should be looking forward, like the way you go on pilgrimage. People will spend thousands to go to Fatima, to Lourdes, no problem, and yet they won't go across the street or the city to a Legion meeting or as an officer to attend our council meeting. It's a vital element that helps to structure the Legion and to spread the word. And in the long run, you're strengthening the church by your attendance at your council meetings as an officer. So look on it as the great privilege and grace that it is.
Wonderful. More questions, clarifications? I think you have a lot of questions. You're just hiding it. Please share your questions. More questions. We're still 20 minutes away from our lunch. Okay, there you go, sister, please.
At every meeting, we're asked whether or not we have found somebody to join. How do you encourage people, or how do you approach people? I think you mentioned a little bit at just the last question, receiving grace is a wonderful thing, and doing Mary's work. We do receive graces, but through your experience and your wife's experience, how do we encourage people?
I think that you just share your own story with them is the best way. Why did you join? Why does anybody join? They see some good in it, or it's the friends that they like, the friends they have met. Like all our friends in early life, we were all juniors together. And it was a fabulous place to be. It was a great buzz. The girls would be telling their mammies, I'm only going to the Legion meeting. And they'd be meeting up with the boys. Not Legion boys. But it was all part of a great social circle. Because in the early years, there was no outside, there was no television when I was young. Well, it started when I was young, but there was no big social life that young people have today, and there was no smartphones, and there was no social media or any of that sort of stuff to distract you. So you were very fortunate to have Vincent de Paul was restrictive, because obviously not everybody could be in a movement like that. So it was a godsend when the Legion came on the scene, and it grew rapidly. Like people in old age who haven't been in the Legion for years remember. Well, actually, I'll tell you a story of something that's happening now due to social media. On Facebook, I found a person that we were junior or intermediate legionaries with 45 years ago, and they emigrated to Canada here, to Toronto, or no, Kitchener. And I just happened to give him a call. And he waved back, and finally we're able to get in communication. So we're both hoping to meet himself and Kay. Both of them met in the Legion too. And as I say, they emigrated and they have a family here and everything else. And we're going to meet them tomorrow morning before the Senatus meeting. We'll have it in our hotel. So we're going to have coffee together. For the first time in 45 years. So that should be interesting. So that's one thing about the Legion family. No matter where you go in the world, it's family. As soon as we spoke to someone here today, or the last few days, we're family. It's Our Lady's family. Her personality is in us all. you know, and the Holy Family. And that's a lovely chapter of the mystical home of Nazareth. Ever read that? Read it again and again, and it's beautiful. The way he puts that. It's an inspirational book. It's not just the rules, it's the theology and the Mariology that's in it. It's so inspirational, has inspired so many generations. Sort of thing. And we were very privileged to have a meeting with the Cardinal yesterday. And he told us his parents were in the Legion. Sort of thing. So, that's quite frequent because Frank Duff described the Legion as a seedbed for vocations. And I'm sure you all know people who have gone on from the Legion ranks into the priesthood and into the religious life. Because they see the need. Once they're involved in what you're involved in, they see what's needed in the church and they go on to the next level. And in Dublin, it's at least in the last 5 years, there's at least 5 to 10 Dominicans who have come to Legion membership. Two in particular were agnostic rather than atheist, met on the streets, no practice whatsoever. And then persuaded, see, the first 3 months of Legion membership is a probationary period. And during that time, people who are lapsed can quite safely come into the Legion. We don't say you must be a practicing Catholic. Is from your promise. From after 3 months, you must have committed yourself back to the church if you have been lapsed. But those 3 months are times for testing, and if they see, and it's the little communities, the friendship that they've discovered, and everything else. That's what changes their hearts and brings them back to faith. And those two men went on after one became a treasurer of the Curia, and they went on to the priesthood, and they're priests about 3 years now. And actually, I was going to say, one of them came to here. I think the last time it was a Pat O'Hara came and visited, but I think was there 2 men on that occasion? Yeah. Well, the person that came with him went on to the priesthood afterwards, and he's a priest. Father Colin Mannion was the other man. Yeah, he's a priest now. So that's just an example of what happens, but it's your experience, and just tell people about what has done for you, and that should help convince them that they might need it themselves.
Thank you, brother. There's another question here.
Yes, Brother Raymond, thank you so much. I'm Lillian Fernandez from Our Lady of Good Success Presidium. And I was wondering, we have a member who is a nurse, and she gets an off only once in 2 weeks. So would she be allowed to be an active member because she can attend only once in 2 weeks?
Well, it's a difficult one because it's regular membership is what's required with the Legion. But perhaps a twin sitting could be arranged, and I presume at a different time, morning, afternoon, that might facilitate her.
It's not helping. The timings are not helping her. Yeah.
Well, I think she have to retain an auxiliary for the time being until circumstances change.
Okay, so it's never been permitted to do once in 2 weeks?
No. You may miss a meeting occasionally, but we can't do anything about that, or holidays or whatever. But it has to be regular membership, regular attendance at a weekly meeting. And you know the standing instruction?
The thing is, she has already started attending meetings.
Which I hope she loves.
Which she loves, and it's going to be hard to ask her to leave.
Yeah.
So, do we still go ahead?
Well, the standing instruction is your instruction. You know, but she may, find a way around that when she realises that's what's needed. We have high standards, and unless you maintain them, the thing just collapses completely.
Thank you so much.
But we'd love her to be a full member. But an auxiliary member is also very important.
Okay, another question here. Back to the sister.
Thank you.
I'm Linda Hendren from the Mother of Prince Presidium of this parish. My question is, how do we deal with people who have been away for 3 months or more? Like, for example, on vacation, or on medical leave?
Well, if they're on genuine medical leave, they're on leave, and if they're, you just keep them on the roll and just take leave of absence for that period. But at some stage you have to decide if they are not in a position to be a regular member, then they'd have to go into auxiliary membership. But you have to be firm about that, because otherwise you have about 10 people on the roll and 5 people attending. That's crazy.
And my understanding is if they've been away for at least over a year, when they return back,
You start again.
they start again, go on probation and the Legion promise.
Yes.
Thank you.
That's a good question. Okay, the sister coming, please be patient. Please go ahead with your question.
Brother Raymond, I've been in the Legion since juniors, and I found the handbook was too rigid and tough during that time. Now I understand better. My question is, did you ever meet Brother Frank Duff and how he was? Because his book is too good. We can't find any fault in that book.
Yeah. Well, he was very, I would say, straight man, but he wouldn't entertain people who are not keeping the standards that were expected, be it in the church or in the Legion. But I was working, should we say, I attended the Concilium officers meetings on a monthly basis, and he would be at that meeting, took an active part, even though he was well into his 80s at that stage. And so he had a great vision where we would be suggesting things which are off the wall most likely, but he could talk and explain to us the reason why something was the way it was, and it would make sense then. But he was father figure, you could say, to the 2 hostels that were run in Dublin by the Legion. He started the 2 hostels, one in 1927 for men, for homeless men, and he solved the problem for the city almost overnight. The government asked for help of the Vincent de Paul, but I don't know what happened, it wasn't forthcoming, so they went back to him privately, and he mustered up some of his brothers in the Vincent de Paul privately, and they became the men of the Legion. For the first 8 years of life, the Legion was exclusively a ladies' organisation, and he always had the intention of mixing it, but it was only when he had this hostel to open that men were needed, and then it was a natural thing that they would come in. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here today. And I'm sure Legion families wouldn't be here today. Amazing. But then about 3 years later, he opened a women's hostel for women who were destitute, who were homeless. Also very early on, a woman came one night with a child, and he let her into the hospital, and that was a big no-no at the time. Women with unmarried mothers was a big no, and they were treated like I don't know what, but the only solution was they should go into a laundry, the Magdalene, and the children go into an orphanage. And he always said, the best person to rear a child is his mother. So, it wasn't a solution, and it caused so many problems of the future that we didn't even know about at the time. Part of the scandals of the future, especially in Ireland. But he had a solution which they wouldn't listen to, because it's just they had the system worked out, and it was a financially rewarding system. But his system was that he actually arranged things, because very shortly there was a lot of women with their children in the hospital. And he arranged that one mother, in groups of 5, one mother would mind all the children, and the other 4 mothers would go out and work independently. and the children were all looked after beautifully. It was a wonderful arrangement because they were all educated in the local schools, and it was a celebration, 75 years, a few years ago, and there was a whole reunion of families that had come to it, the young people, the families, and it was two men in particular, one was a millionaire, one were all very successful, and they said this was the happiest time of their lives, family life. But yeah, where are we going with all these stories?
Thank you. I think there will be more interesting questions. Brother, again.
Okay, I think we're...
my question is about...
now.
My question is about trends in the union, in the Legion, with especially young people.
Sorry, the question?
What trends have you observed in the Legion amongst young people?
Well, generally speaking, the Legion doesn't seem to be responding to young people. We don't seem to have the programs that we should have. There's a lot of, like, the handbook has to be interpreted for young people, and they should have fun in their Concilium and in their work, and it should be of a general nature, peer work, peer help, share medals and things with their friends and try to speak to them in that way. But also, as I say, should have a little social life. There should be little extras, some refreshments after the meeting, things like that. A little, a Legion light, I call it. Light.
So is there a handbook for little ones?
Sorry? Huh?
Is there a handbook then for the little ones?
Not as such.
Or can one, even when I started reading the book, I had a hard time understanding it because it's of a different language, right, accent.
There was at different stages suggestions to have a Legion handbook for children, but the problem would be that the universal handbook, like there's only 350 or 60 pages in the handbook, but I agree it's sophisticated for a lot of people, but it's up to the officers to interpret the handbook and the spiritual director to guide them through the sections in the handbook. Some of it, as I say, but the same goes for a junior, for the two adult legionaries in the junior Concilium, that they in turn should interpret and pick small pieces, little pieces from the handbook to read, and bits that would be easier for them to read, but to be selective. They couldn't read a lot of the handbook for children and would find it very hard to understand, but they'd have it broken down to their level and interpreted for them. But that's part of your function as an officer, to help do that. I think we leave it at that. Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you.